He thought he was safe in his own neighborhood, in the home he worked so hard to build. But that safety vanished the moment strangers showed up at his door, flashing fake badges, pretending to be authority, demanding that he leave. It wasn't just about a house. It was about power, prejudice, and the belief that he didn't belong. What followed was a clash that revealed more than anyone expected. And the ending? Something no one saw coming. Could justice really arrive when hope seemed lost? He was the kind of man who kept to himself. Steady job, quiet evenings, and a sense of pride in finally owning a home he worked years to afford. His neighborhood wasn't perfect, but it was his. Weekends meant mowing the lawn, waving to a few friendly faces, and spending time with family. On the surface, life was ordinary, peaceful even. But beneath that calm, cracks were forming. Not everyone saw him as a neighbor. Some saw him as an outsider, someone who didn't fit their idea of who belonged behind those fences. Still, he carried on, ignoring the subtle looks, the whispered comments, the unreturned waves. After all, he believed hard work and good intentions spoke louder than prejudice. Yet, as the days passed, those stares grew colder, the silence heavier. And soon, that unease would take shape in a way he never imagined. Because hidden behind clipped smiles and neatly trimmed hedges was a plan. One that would test not only his right to a home but his dignity as a man. It started with a knock, sharp, insistent, almost rehearsed. When he opened the door, 3 men stood on the porch. They wore matching jackets, clipped badges on their chests, and the kind of stern expressions meant to intimidate. They claimed to be from the neighborhood association, said there had been violations, that he had to vacate immediately. Their voices were cold, their tone final, as if no explanation would matter. At first, he tried to reason with them. He had papers, proof of ownership, every right to be there. But their smirks told a different story. This wasn't about paperwork. This was about power. About sending a message, you don't belong here. And the more he insisted on his rights, the harder their voices pressed, louder, sharper, until the entire block could hear. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains, some whispering, others simply watching. No one stepped forward. He felt the weight of those unseen eyes, judging, waiting, maybe even agreeing. The men began circling, pointing out fake infractions. A lawn too long, a car parked the wrong way, things that could never justify eviction. Yet they stood there, daring him to resist. The sun dipped lower, shadows stretched across the street, and the tension grew heavy enough to choke. He realized this wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a trap, a staged performance designed to humiliate him, to strip away his place in the very neighborhood he called home. And every second, the fear built, not just for his house but for his safety. One man reached for a radio, muttering about calling backup. Another adjusted his jacket, letting the glint of something metallic show at his waist. His chest tightened. If these weren't real officers, who were they? And what would happen if he kept resisting? The line between intimidation and violence was blurring fast. He stood his ground, but inside, panic churned. Would anyone step in? Would anyone care? Or was this the moment he would be erased? The street grew quiet, unnervingly still, as the impostors closed in. His back pressed against the doorway of his own home, every muscle tense, every instinct screaming to defend himself. One of the men stepped closer, his hand resting near the metal glint at his waist. Another smirked, radio still in hand, murmuring about removing him by force. It was no longer a warning, it was a threat. For a moment, time seemed suspended. He thought of the years of sacrifice it took to earn this house, of the family photos hanging inside, of the belief that if he just worked hard enough, he would be safe here. Now, all of that stood on the edge of collapse, about to be taken not by law, but by hate dressed up as authority. Then, a sound cut through the tension. A deep rumble, steady and commanding. Engines. Heavy boots hitting the pavement. The impostors froze, eyes narrowing as figures emerged at the end of the block. 6 men in uniform, not cheap replicas, but the real thing. Navy SEALs, broad-shouldered, disciplined, moving with purpose. They didn't shout. They didn't posture. They simply advanced, their presence enough to shift the balance instantly. The impostors, once bold, now stuttered, their fake badges suddenly powerless under the weight of true authority. The homeowner's heart pounded, not just from fear, but from the overwhelming surge of relief, of validation. He wasn't invisible. He wasn't alone. For the first time that evening, power tilted in his favor. But this wasn't over. As the seals closed in, one question remained, hanging thick in the night air. Would justice truly be served? Or would the impostors find another way to slip through the cracks? The impostors didn't stay brave for long. Faced with real authority, their false confidence crumbled. Their fake badges, once flashed with arrogance, were stripped away in seconds. Neighbors who had watched in silence now stepped outside, their whispers replaced by the weight of reality. What they had just witnessed was no accident. It was a deliberate act of intimidation, a reminder of how far prejudice will go when left unchallenged. For the man at the center of it all, the night ended with his home intact, but not without scars. The walls still stood, but the sense of safety he once felt within them had been shaken. He realized that no matter how hard he worked, how much he proved himself, there would always be those ready to question his right to belong. Yet something else lingered too. The moment he wasn't alone. When real heroes arrived, they didn't just protect him, they exposed the truth. They reminded everyone watching that justice doesn't come from fear, or intimidation, or fake authority. It comes from standing against what's wrong, no matter how bold or familiar it may seem. This story wasn't just about one man's home. It was about the countless lives disrupted by racism disguised as rules, laws, or authority. It was about a society where belonging is still questioned, where safety is conditional, where silence often allows injustice to thrive. The question is, how many more doors will be knocked on by hate before we finally say enough? How many more people must prove their worth in the places they already call home? Because until that answer changes, stories like his will keep repeating. And the choice to break the cycle belongs to us all.